Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Dose of Dental podcast. The focus of this podcast is to share undergraduate and dental school experiences from dental students and dental professionals through valuable discussions. Through sharing the journeys and stories of current dental students and dental professionals, our goal is to help you find answers or guidance for your own pre-dental journeys. Joining us today is Paul Dimarzo, a dental student studying at the University of Buffalo School of Dental Medicine. Paul graduated from Stony Brook University with a bachelor's degree in health science along with a minor in chemistry. He's now an incoming second-year dental student at the University of Buffalo School of Dental Medicine. During his undergraduate years, Paul was heavily involved with the Pre-Dental Society at Stony Brook, took part in an international dental outreach program in the Dominican Republic, and was also a dental assistant for 5 years. Hey, Paul, welcome to the podcast. How does it feel being done with your first year of dental school and now entering your second?
What's going on, guys? So I just finished up my first year. It went very well. It definitely was a little difficult in the beginning, adapting to a new environment. But overall, it went pretty well, and I'm excited to, move forward and learn some more.
Hey, Paul, welcome to the podcast. Long time no see. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, like where you're from, where'd you go to school, stuff like that.
Yeah, so I grew up on Long Island in New York, right like by Stony Brook, maybe 25 minutes away. So I stayed home during undergrad, and I went to Stony Brook for 4 years. And then I applied to dental school at the end of my third year, and then I went straight from undergrad into dental school, and now I'm up here at Buffalo.
Yeah, so let's start with that dreaded question on every interview. Why dentistry? Why did you choose to pursue this field?
Yeah, so I always feel like I wanted to go into healthcare. And then as I was in high school trying to figure out what I wanted to do in undergrad, I was talking to my dad one day, and I was actually on my way to an orthodontist appointment. And my dad asked me, what about, being a dentist or an orthodontist or something like that? And I didn't really know much about it. So I started asking my orthodontist about it. And it kind of turned into a thing where I would go in after school and shadow him here and there. And then eventually he hired me as an assistant. So that's kind of how I got introduced. And then at that point, I wanted to be an orthodontist. I mean, I think a lot of people in the beginning have that idea. At this point, I'm more pursuing general dentistry, but I'm definitely interested in exploring different options as I get through dental school. But I think, as a lot of people realize as they start dental school, that there's so much to offer, and there's so many opportunities there. So I think what solidified me going into dentistry was that I got more involved in like different things at Stony Brook. I got involved with volunteers around the world, and I got to travel to Dominican Republic. I think, Suraj, you did that too recently, right?
Yeah, so we just went May 27th to June 9th. We didn't go to DR, but we went to Guatemala instead. We went to a place called San Pedro, which is like, my Spanish is all right. My Spanish is okay. But honestly, when you go there and like, I probably took Spanish for like 7, 8 years maybe of my life, like in school. And like, I learned so much better when you like live in the place and everyone around you only knows Spanish and that's all you can say. So my Spanish got a little better, but since I got back, it's gone away. But yeah, the experience was definitely really good. It was like a third world country, so it's like really interesting to see, what we take for granted they don't really even have. So it's definitely a cool experience. Like, can you actually elaborate a little bit on, how your experience was?
Yeah, so I actually got involved with planning the trip during my sophomore year. Yeah, my sophomore year. And then I ended up being chosen as like a team leader for the trip. And so I went to the Dominican Republic with a bunch of students from Stony Brook. There was a few from UC Berkeley, and then there were some from NYU. And it was a really cool experience. I mean, I got to meet other people that were interested in dentistry, and we got to, treat patients in the clinic. I mean, we weren't treating them ourselves, but we were assisting and sterilizing and, just helping run the clinic. And then we had like a little bit of time where we got to go explore Dominican Republic and, immerse ourselves in the culture and everything. And then when I came back, I took over the lead for the whole club. So I became like the president of the club, and I helped plan more trips. But unfortunately, those trips got canceled because of COVID. So that whole club was kind of on a pause. But I had a great experience with VAW. I definitely learned a lot. I got to see how dentistry works in another country, and see, the differences. At that point, I was already an assistant in the US. So I got to, compare my experience in the Dominican Republic with my experience in assisting on Long Island. So that was really interesting, very cool experience. And that probably was one of the number one things that, solidified dentistry for me. At that point, I was already going for it, but that's when I like knew myself that like this is what I was going to do.
Yeah, so I'm also an assistant, and in my head when I thought we are gonna go there, I thought we wouldn't have like the basic tools that we use like in our office right now, but there's like a lot of parallels between what we have here and what they used over there, so it's kind of cool. Um, and if I'd ever assisted, I feel like I wouldn't have really known that. So can you talk a little bit about your own assisting experience? I know you mentioned that you were an ortho assistant.
Yeah, so I started assisting in ortho during high school, actually. So it was my senior year of high school. And so I did that in senior year of high school. And then since I stayed home for college, I was able to assist after school and, work with my college schedule. And then I did ortho for another 2 years. And then, so it was like 3 years total straight. And then I found a job at a general dentistry office. So in ortho, I kind of got to assist him in, placing brackets, different things like that. Eventually I got to experience, how to take wires out and change the colors on the brackets and everything. I would take, panoramic x-rays and scan for patients for Invisalign and retainers. And I did a lot of lab work too. So I would actually make the retainers, which was an awesome experience. That actually helps me now in dental school because we, do that with our indirect course. We had to make a like an Essex retainer type thing and cut it in a certain way. This way we can make a temporary crown with it. So that was a really, helpful experience. And then when I started working in general dentistry, I, assisted with everything. I assisted with root canals, crown preps, composites, different types of things. I took x-rays, which definitely will be helpful in dental school. A lot of my classmates that didn't get to assist, they never really learned how to do that before dental school. So it's a little tricky at first when you learn about it. So I got to do that, help take impressions. I would assist with extractions, all types of things that you see in the general dentistry office. And that when I started working there, that's when it was same around the same time that I started getting involved with VAW. So when I got to go to the Dominican Republic, that was part of what solidified dentistry for me. But then on the same, wavelength, I also was kind of solidifying that decision by assisting. That if I hadn't been an assistant, I don't know that I would have been completely sure in my decision to go into dentistry. I learned so much. I, learned how to set up for different opportunities and different things. So that actually not only helped me solidify that decision, but now that I'm in dental school, I'm familiar with all the materials and I, kind of have a grasp on what is used for what. So yeah, that was the number one thing I did in undergrad was dental assisting. I recommend that to everybody that I've talked to. I mean, it is probably the best thing you can do as a pre-dental.
Yeah, so Paul, can I ask you like where can pre-dentals find this information? How can they apply for these dental outreach programs? These valuable resources that we've benefited from greatly.
Yeah, of course. So I know Volunteers Around the World has chapters at a lot of different colleges. So definitely look into that because that's a great opportunity that is pretty easy to get involved with. And then if your undergraduate program is affiliated with a dental school or there's a dental school at your college, so like Stony Brook had a dental school. So I was able to volunteer at their dental clinic, which I'm not sure if they do anymore after COVID, but I know that a lot of me and all my friends that were pre-dentals at the time, we did that. So that was another great volunteering experience. There's a lot of different things. I would, reach out to your pre-dental society, see if there's volunteering experiences with that. And then I know there's some other organizations, I can't think of the names, but they're definitely out there and you just kind of have to look for them. And yeah.
Yeah, so you mentioned you were an ortho assistant, so and you also did shadowing on this trip. So what's the best way for pre-dentals to, get those shadowing and dental assisting positions and opportunities? Like what's the best way to go about that?
So the first thing I would do is start with your actual dentist. They know you more than any other dentist out there because they've been treating you. So, I would express interest to them and tell them that you're interested in dentistry and that you want to learn a little bit more. And then you could start shadowing them. If they're not comfortable with it, you could also just reach out to other offices in your area. And again, if your school has a dental school affiliated with it, or if there's one nearby, you could also see if there's an opportunity for you to shadow at the dental school. That also is a great opportunity aside from shadowing in a traditional dental office or dental setting, because you'll see what it's like to kind of be a student in dentistry. And it's a lot different than when you're actually in an office. They work at a different pace. They see different types of cases. So that's definitely a good idea to start. And then what worked for me in the beginning was that my shadowing opportunity kind of turned into an assisting position. So I don't know that if that hadn't happened, I don't know that I would have even been able to find a dental assisting position. And but they're out there. I mean, even if you just go online and look up opportunities and job listings for dental assisting, they're out there. And especially in New York State, you have an advantage. There's no like licensure or certification required to be a dental assistant. Some offices might want you to go and take the I believe it's called the Danby, and then get your certification for dental assisting, but most offices don't require it. So they're out there. You just have to look for them and look online, build your resume. If you don't have a large resume, they might not really care all that much. They know that you're interested in dentistry. They know that you have to get this exposure, and it helps them. It helps you that you're getting experience, but it also helps them. They need staff, especially since COVID. A lot of dental offices are understaffed, so they're out there. They're looking for you as much as you're looking for them.
Yeah, and I actually shadowed my dentist in the beginning. In the beginning, I was not even dental. I did not care for it. I thought it was nasty. But then like once I found out it was more than just cleaning teeth, because I had no idea. I got Invisalign, which is like the first step in my dental journey. And then while I was like waiting in the chair, I was like, where is she? What else is she doing right now? Like, what could she be doing? And then she came in and I asked her, and I was like, where have you been? Like, what's going on? She's like, I have other appointments. I'm doing like cleanings and crowns and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what is that? Like, what are these things? Because I mean, my teeth were pretty good as a kid. Didn't really have that many problems. So I wasn't really exposed to as many, all these things. So when I started shadowing her, and it really got interested in like, the hands-on aspect of dentistry and like how it's also in your mind, but it's also like with your hands, and you're very active. And I like that part. So I started shadowing her, and then I really enjoyed it. And then I actually contacted the doctor I work with for now. I contacted him over like social media, which is like crazy. And then started shadowing him, and then I started working for him eventually. We're cool. So he offered me a job, and no like formal interview process, no resumes, no things like that. You just kind of have to pick and find your opportunities as they go. There's no like formula to getting an assistant job or a shadowing job. Like, yeah, you can do it over LinkedIn, Indeed, all these random job sites, but honestly, like it's up to you and like how you network. Whether that be you meet the guy at a basketball court, you meet him in the gym, you meet him at a store, coffee shop. You never know. You never know who you're going to talk to and who they might be. So, it's really interesting how different people can get their jobs. I know a lot of my friends have gotten jobs different ways. So that's
Yeah,
definitely.
I agree too. Like, and to kind of build off of something you were saying, so like you had really no idea before that what a dentist really did besides cleanings. And I think I had a similar experience because the only experiences I had as a young kid was, getting my cleanings, and I had braces. So that's all I really knew. And I was actually talking to a friend of mine about this the other day. Like, so they're starting a program for speech pathology, and they were talking about like their interviews and all that. And they were saying like it's so tough sometimes because some of the other people that are pre-dental, or in their case, pre-speech or whatever, they have like like some people have a history when they're young kids of like really bad dental experiences, or like, they had to get a lot of work as a young kid. So that's kind of like their story when they go for interviews, which is great. People, have those experiences, but then there's people like us who never really had that experience. So when you get to the interview and they ask you, why do you want to be a dentist? it's okay to be honest and say, I don't have some life-changing experience that made me want to be a dentist. I found the career interesting. I explored it and I found that it was something I really liked. So, not everyone has that life-changing experience that, makes them have a calling for dentistry.
Yeah, no, now that you mentioned that, we had Brandon on the other day. I don't think he would mind me sharing a story. It's not like that personal, but um, he said he like broke his front teeth. He like went into his gum. He went to the doctor, and the doctor did like a magic trick for him, um, which kind of stuck with him. And he didn't like the dentist before, but once he had the experience of like a doctor being friendly and doing like a magic trick in front of him, it kind of sparked like, ooh, what is this? Like, what's going on here? Like, I want to do it. And now he does like magic like for kids on the weekends while he's in dental school, which is crazy. Like when we heard that story, I was like, there's just you never know. Like there's so many things that could be the why, and some people might have the most exuberant whys, but they're honest. Like that's just like how it happened. So
Yeah. I mean, if you have a story like that, and that's the reason you're going into dentistry, like that's great. Like
yeah.
that, the fact that you have that ability to share that is
Mhm.
an awesome ability, when it comes to the interview. But some people don't, and that's okay. You can have just a regular interest in dentistry, and
Yeah.
that's enough.
Definitely. I think a lot of people like struggle with that. Like, oh, I don't have like a crazy story to say in my personal essay. I don't know what to
Yeah.
do. But like I've heard even one of my colleagues who like just he's actually you probably don't know him, but he goes to Sunny Dental. He's a D1. He was a D1. And he just
I know.
had
What's
Kevin
his name?
Zhang.
Kevin, what?
Kevin Zhang.
No, I don't know.
No. Yeah, but I think he wrote his personal narrative on or personal statement on like a book or something. And
Yeah.
like tied into what like why you want to do it. So it's just like a bunch of ways to do that. So now that we're on the topic of whys, like what kind of kept you like focused and like like what kept your why as your motivation? How did you keep your motivation to continue dentistry like throughout your undergraduate years and dental school? Because I know that's something that can be mentally challenging as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the number one thing that I did that kept me on the track was being so heavily involved with Stony Brook Pre-Dental Society. And building a group of friends and colleagues that are also going on that path. Because when you have people that you can talk to and pick their brain on what can I do to get more involved, or what do you think of like this plan for the DAT, like, or where are you at in your process, like just like getting ideas from people on how to better build your application. And people that are going through the same process as you, like they have those same points in that path where they're like, wow, I don't think I can do this, or this is going to be really hard. Like, so building a group of friends that are also going through is definitely the number one thing. And I think just getting involved in general, like the more that you get involved and you do the things that you like, the easier it is. So for me, I am pretty open with everybody. Like I didn't have the best grades in undergrad. So I was never the type of person that was studying every night for a test coming up in a couple of weeks. I never did that. I still don't do that. Sometimes I wish I was that person, but I think that I focus a lot more on what am I enjoying. So in undergrad, I assisted maybe 20, 30 hours a week, which looking back, I don't know how I did that. I 100% could never do that in dental school. But that kind of, kept me like interested in the field. And when you're more interested in it, you're more willing to, keep trying and putting more effort in, and, keeping your hopes up. So I think just focusing on those things. I mean, in dental school, with my didactic classes, I study a lot, I will be honest, but there are friends of mine who study way more than me, and they might do better than me on those classes. But for me, I'd rather focus on the more hands-on aspects. So when I have free time, if I'm not hanging out with friends or studying or in class, a lot of times I'll go to the pre-clinic and I'll practice that kind of thing. So I think focus more on the things that you're enjoying, focus more on the things that are driving you to pursue this career, and don't get too hung up on the little things that you think are so important, like statistics and your scores on things. Like those are important, don't get me wrong, but it's not everything. So you just have to pick the things you like, focus more on those.
Yeah, no, I think you kind of answered the question, but like, keeping yourself involved in dentistry while being like in the books during school is very important. Even if you're just like kind of shadowing like a day or something, just to kind of get your head back into it, like this is where I'm going to be, instead of like, where am I going? When you're just doing orgo all day or just doing bio all day. Like I know even during the school year, I try to keep I worked like a Friday, Saturday, which hindsight, I might change that in the future because Fridays and Saturdays are fun, but like, it's whatever. But I worked those 2 days and like it kept my head in it, and it motivated me to do better in school. So like that's something that I do to try to keep um, you know, keep my head in dentistry as much as I can, even if I don't have all the time in the world.
Yeah, I also think like you just said, like Fridays and Saturdays, like even if you need that time for free time, like you don't have to always be focusing on dentistry and your application and all this. You need to find time to do, fun
Yeah.
things. Like even just finding friends at, undergrad that have maybe a little bit different pathway. I mean, my two closest friends in undergrad both started medical school, last week. So like they weren't doing the same thing as me, but we were at a point where like we all needed to really focus on, pre-dental, or in their case pre-med. But then we found time to like do other fun things too. Like you need to make time for yourself as well. Like if you are putting 100% of your time and your mindset into your dental school application and all that, you're going to become run down, and you're honestly not even, you might not even want to do it anymore. You might realize this is like way too much and you can't handle it. But I think if you, balance your schedule enough, it's definitely attainable.
Yeah, so can you tell us a little bit about some of the obstacles you might have faced during your undergraduate career? Even in the process of applying to dental school, like the dental school application, what were some, maybe some major hurdles you had to face and overcome?
Yes, so this is one thing I'm also very open about. I took the DAT twice, so I did not, focus enough on that the first time around. The first time I did, it was the summer that I went on that trip to Dominican Republic. I was working like full time over the summer at the dental office and then studying for the DAT at the same time. So I think that looking back, so that I didn't have to take it twice, I would have the first time, maybe stopped working for a month or two, or, decrease my hours and really just focus solely on the DAT. I think that when you put, all your time into the DAT specifically, you are like bound to do well. And then that definitely reflected in my scores when I took it the second time. I think my like first time I got like an 18 overall, and then the second time I had a 21. So that definitely was something that I struggled with. My GPA in general, I had like around a 3.4 or something like that. So that was definitely something that I struggled with during the application cycle. And it's mentally draining too. I mean, you hear all these stories of people getting to dental school that have a 3.8 or higher, or they have a 4.0. And then you also, like, even if you're talking to like a friend and they're like, oh, my GPA is not good, like anyways, and then you later find out they have like a 3.8, and then and you're like, are they serious? Are they really complaining right now? So I
That's
think
that's
that's
valid.
another thing. Yeah. So just I think, my scores were something that I struggled with a little bit. That was probably the biggest obstacle for me. I mean, I was very involved in a lot of different things, and I had plenty of experience in dentistry, so that I was pretty confident when I was going into the application. But definitely my scores, that was the toughest part.
Yeah, so you mentioned your application already. So scores, whatever, that's a thing, but it seems like your extracurriculars and what you do outside of dentist, outside of school and academics is like what Buffalo kind of really saw in you. So how did you approach like which schools to apply to, and like did you like research the schools like a lot before you went, and like did you kind of check out the atmosphere before you decided?
Yeah, so as a Stony Brook undergrad, I was like really familiar with the dental school at Stony Brook. So I definitely knew I was going to apply there. I applied to Buffalo as well because it's in-state tuition. And it also is just a very well-known dental school. It's like number 8 in the country or something like that. So like I knew I was going to apply to both of those. I applied to Toro, and yeah, those were the three in New York that I applied to. I knew I didn't want to live in the city. It was too expensive for me, so I didn't. I ruled that out. In my head, I kind of figured if I don't get in the first time, I'd rather. But I was, had to go to the city and live for so expensively. I would rather just like reapply. So I just didn't even bother applying there. I applied to the three schools in Florida. I have a lot of family down there. My parents are down there half the time, so that was something that was drawing me towards there possibly. And then I applied to like a few in Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was one of my favorite interviews. I'll say that. I think Buffalo and Pittsburgh were my two favorite interviews. So, that's a great school. I stuck to the East Coast pretty much though. That's really where I stuck to.
Yeah. So can you, talk a little bit about your interview experience and, what really stuck out to you at those two schools?
Yeah, so I think that for my interview experience, I applied to like 11 schools maybe, and I interviewed at like 4 or 5, I want to say. But what I think sticks out when you're going into an interview, not only are they interviewing you for the position, but you're there to learn more about their school as well. So I think having when you're in the interview, if they're portraying themselves as like, you know, just like genuine people, that is a great sign. My Buffalo interview was very conversational. It wasn't all about dentistry. It was about, who I am outside of dentistry and, what my interests are. And I think that that makes the interview a little bit easier, a little bit more relaxed. So that's one thing that stood out to me. I think, asking them about outreach was a big thing for me because I knew that that was something I wanted to do. I did it in undergrad. I did it a little bit in high school, and now I'm part of the outreach organization at my school now. So I think that that was something that I really wanted to make sure that they were big in. Which Buffalo is huge in outreach. They send out like a email once a month to the whole student body of like several things per week, and you can sign up, and then they narrow it down, based on how involved you've been. So that was another thing that I really focused on. And clinical experience, obviously. So that was another thing that you really want to learn more about. When are you going to start in clinic? When are you like what are the requirement systems? Like, do you have to, reach a certain quota of each procedure and all that? So, asking those important questions and learning more about them. Don't really treat it as you're supposed to sit there and get grilled. Like, make it conversational, and you'll have a great experience as long as they're conversational as well.
Yeah. I think like it's kind of like a luck of the draw, like who your interviewer is.
Yeah.
Did you have any that were like very stern and kind of not conversational?
Let me think. Buffalo and Stony Brook were very conversational.
Yeah.
I want to say I interviewed at two of the schools in Florida. One of them very conversational, the other one not so much. It really depends. I might not even be the school, honestly. It could be just the person that interviews you. I think people everyone has a different experience. When I applied to Buffalo and I interviewed at Buffalo, I was told be prepared with ethical questions. Like, they are very heavy on asking questions about ethics. And while some of my classmates had that experience, I maybe got one ethical question during their interview. Other than that, it was like totally conversational and relaxed.
Yeah. So now you've chosen Buffalo. How did you feel going into a dental school? Did you feel like anxious, nervous, excited? Did you have like imposter syndrome when you first got there? Like, how are the vibes when you first like started?
When I was coming in, I was more excited. I wasn't very stressed out. And then I became very stressed out. Once you start, it finds its way to you. But going into it, I was pretty relaxed. I was more just excited, and like you see all these dental students on Instagram, or I had friends that were dental students before me, and you see what they're doing, and you just get so excited about having that opportunity. Until it starts, and then you're stressed out and you're like, I need a break.
Yeah, and I see those dental students all the time, and I think about like what is the actual reality, of a D1, D2, D3, D4 student. So can you kind of walk us through like a day in the life of a D2, maybe D1, what you do on a weekday, on a weekend, step by step throughout the day?
Yeah. So my first semester, I had classes maybe on average. It was different every day, but maybe let's say 8 to 4 each day. So I took gross anatomy, biochemistry, histology. Uh, I took dental anatomy. There was like an intro course, and then there was like a preclinic basic skills class where like we, just kind of learned how to use the drill. We weren't even doing preparations or anything yet. And then our second semester, we took direct. So that is learning how to do composites and amalgams. And then we took microbiology, physiology, occlusion. So learning how like how teeth bite together and, how teeth match up and all that. And how that also, plays a role into your jaw and all that. And then we took a course on, I don't even remember, there were so many of them, but radiology, we took radiology course. So there was a lot of courses that we took our second semester, and then we started our second year classes this past summer. So we took indirect, which is crowns, crown preparation. So we started that over the summer, and that's going to continue into the fall this semester. And then we took a course on nutrition, and then we took a perio course. So we kind of got to practice doing like scaling and root planing on each other and practice prophies and all that. So that was our whole first year. Kind of our second year started before our first full year ended. But I think the daily life of a D1 is kind of like you go to class, you come home, eat something real quick, study, and then in the second semester you had to not only do all that, but you also had to find time to go and practice drilling and doing preparations. So but you definitely learn how to do it, like, what I mean, like you fall into a rhythm and you figure out a way to just get it done. And while like the first week or two it's like very hectic, you figure out what you need to spend more time in. You figure out how soon before a test do I need to start preparing for it. And you definitely get very used to going into an exam and feeling like absolutely nothing. So that is definitely something that's very eye-opening, especially for a lot of us who would go into tests in undergrad and hopefully know as much as we could. Now I go into tests sometimes and I'm like, I don't even know what are we even taking this test on, So you figure that out, and you make it work. You just figure out your rhythm.
Yeah. So how do you manage? How are you able to balance like your social life along with dental school as well as the other hobbies that you might have?
I will tell you, I definitely balance it, and I definitely do enjoy myself. Some weekends we don't have time to go out or do anything. So you're in the study room of the library all weekend. But when we get done with a big week of tests, we are out and about enjoying ourselves. There's a lot to do in Buffalo, especially during football season. The Bills is a huge thing up here, so Bills games are a lot of fun. I went to one or two of those, I think, tailgates for that. There's a lot of really cool restaurants and bars in Buffalo. Niagara Falls is 20 minutes away, so you find time. And again, like what I said like I talked about earlier when we were talking about undergrad, I think it's so important to make time for yourself and enjoy things that you like doing, and kind of step away from dentistry here and there, or else you're going to burn out and you're going to be very miserable. So it's definitely a very important thing to me, is balancing.
I totally forgot that the Bills are in Buffalo. I have Stephon Diggs on the fantasy team, so like, gotta do great things next year, or else I'm losing $30. So
Yeah,
but
no.
so you're kind of debunking some popular myths about Buffalo here, like because I always hear, I could have gone to Buffalo for undergrad, but obviously it's chose Stony Brook. Like, how is like the weather? Is it as bad as they say it is? And like, Is it in the middle? Is Buffalo in the middle of nowhere? Like, is it actually like that over there?
It depends who you ask. I have friends that are from the South, like Florida and the Carolinas, and they think it is so bad up here. But then there's someone like me, like I, I really don't think it's that different from Long
Yeah.
Island. You guys are both from Long Island as well, so like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not terribly different. It snows most days, I'll say, but it's not accumulating to feet of snow.
Yeah.
When I came up here, I had this idea that I was gonna like walk out of my apartment building and I wouldn't be able to get out the door. Like people tell you about the tunnel systems. I've never even seen the tunnel, so I don't even know if it's really there. So like, I mean, people overhype the weather. It gets cold, but I don't think it's too different from where we're from.
Mhm. Yeah. So I'm just gonna. I just have to know just because like I don't know. I have some family that lives up there and like they say it's good, but I have no idea. And
Yeah.
the long drive, so like maybe.
I mean, that's another thing. Like I thought it was so far, such a long drive. Like I personally enjoy the drive. Like I did it this morning. Actually, I came back this morning because I had to move into my new apartment and um I left at like 6 a.m. I got back here at like 1:30, so it wasn't terrible.
Right. So I always want to go back to the coursework in dental school. So how like comparable is it towards coursework in undergrad? Like, is it I've heard like a lot of even like med students say and dental students say that like it's kind of easier just because it's not like focused on crazy places. It's just kind of this is like what you're doing and you have a lot of time to do it. So what is your opinion on that stuff?
I think that not it's not necessarily harder. I'll agree on that. It's not harder material than what you are doing in undergrad. I think that a lot of it is similar and that like you'll recall things that you learned in undergrad and it helps you learn it quicker. And I think another part of it is that it's related to what you're doing in somehow. I mean, I won't lie, like there's some classes like biochemistry that we would do a whole lecture on something and then the last two slides would be how it's related to dentistry. So like some classes it's not really, but I think overall like it's the material itself is not harder, but there's more of it. So I'll have like for each exam maybe 300 or 400 slides sometimes that I have to look over for the exam, and each slide is usually packed with information. So it's definitely a lot more workload, but it's not necessarily harder.
Cool. So, yeah, I just want to ask, like, how, about Buffalo, about the dental school itself. How is the relationship between, the faculty and the students? Do you feel like you're getting adequate help, throughout your classes? Do you feel like they prepare you enough for exams? How helpful are the resources that they have there? And do you feel like Buffalo is putting you in the best position to succeed?
Yeah, so definitely the student body like is awesome. I mean, we have like a big little system where you have a big and in the year above you, and they kind of help guide you throughout your first year. I mean, really through all your first 3 years because you have them throughout all dental school to refer to. And not only that, but like I'm friends with a lot of people the year above me, and like you become friends with people in other classes, and everyone's very helpful. No one's really out there to get you or hurt your grades or anything. Everyone's there to help each other. And when it comes to the faculty, same thing. Faculty for the most part are there to help you. But the curriculum itself is designed, at least for the preclinical, to kind of simulate what the ADEX exam is. So when you graduate dental school, I believe it's 48 out of the 50 states require you to take an ADEX exam. So when you take the ADEX exam, you have to do like a specific type of restoration on a tooth or specific procedures that are like textbook almost. And what happens with that is our preclinical practicals and competencies and everything are those same preparations that we might see on the ADEX exam. So New York State actually does not require the ADEX exam if you want to practice in New York State, but they do require that you do a year of residency. at least for general dentistry. If you want to specialize, it's a little different. But I think the school definitely prepares you very, very well for, dentistry. I mean, I haven't gotten to do any procedures yet on patients, so I don't know how it translates from preclinical to clinical. I can't really tell you much about that. But I have seen the students in the clinic and assisted them and shadowed them, the upperclassmen. So I've seen that, they all feel pretty, good when they're doing a procedure. Obviously, they're dental students, so they need help from faculty here and there. And they need to ask questions, and, they might need assistance on certain things. But overall, I think they definitely really prepare you well. And, dentists that I've shadowed and assisted and spoken to have told me, a lot of them, work in a residency program, and they've told me that the best residents come from Buffalo. So I like the school a lot. I think it, really prepares me well.
What's
And
the,
we are already like, our first year, we were already doing rotations in different clinics, and we were already assisting upperclassmen and getting that experience. And then this semester, well, this past summer, we started, practicing on each other, doing prophies and all that. And then I believe we are getting our first patient this in like the next month or two to do a prophy on. So yeah, so it's definitely very early clinical, curriculum.
And I was just curious, like, what is the class size again for Buffalo?
95.
95.
Yep. There's 95 per class.
So I know that Buffalo they just renovated like their entire facility like recently, right? All their things, like where the entire campus.
Yeah, I want to say maybe within the last 5 years, they did renovations in the pre-clinic. So our pre-clinic is one of the nicest ones I've seen, during interviews and all that. It is like we have like electric handpieces. We have like mannequins that are fairly new. The facility itself is just really nice looking. We have like a really good wet lab. They are currently redoing. We have for our actual clinics, there's 3 floors, and I believe they're redoing one of them right now. And then for the most part, all the operatories in all 3 clinics all have like new seats and new like equipment and everything. The only thing that they still have to replace that is in the plans is the countertops and all that. So yeah, they've put a lot of money into it. I know that they plan on building, or they might have already started building, a special needs clinic, which has like a lot of really cool things. I think one of the things they have is a platform that like a patient in a wheelchair could be wheeled onto the platform, and then the platform tilts back. This way the patient doesn't have to be like lifted out of their wheelchair, and they could sit in their wheelchair during the procedure or whatever they're there for. So they have a lot of plans to redo things. They've started a bunch of things already, but it obviously takes time, and it's not something that just happens super quick. But the pre-clinic is very nice, and that's where I spend most of my time, especially this coming year. I'm going to be there all the time.
Yeah, so I'm definitely gonna look out for those Instagram pictures.
Yeah.
So you talked about the class has like a 95. So the faculty student ratio, like, do you find it like there's a lot of one-on-one attention given to you guys?
I not necessarily like one-on-one, but well, yeah. So we're separated in the pre-clinic into pods. So I'm at pod E. So there's me and I want to say maybe 5 others in my pod, 4 or 5 others, and we're like in a circle kind of. And we are assigned a faculty member for each class. So they're sticking with us, and if we have questions, so maybe it's like 1 faculty member to like 5 or 6 students, maybe something like that. But if you have questions, there's always someone there to answer your question, give you help. And then usually on top of that, whoever the main professor is for the course will be at the front of the room, so you can go get feedback from them too.
Sounds good. So like looks like Buffalo is really just, there to help you reach your goals rather than, like be in the way of them. So Paul, like what are your own personal goals that you have, for the next year, maybe a couple of years, even after dental school?
So I think my number 1 goal is to just improve my hand skills. It's something that, it doesn't necessarily come perfectly easy to me. Some of my classmates pick it up very, very quickly. I think I'm somewhere in the middle. And so that's something that I want to improve on. And really just like learning more, maybe learning more about different specialties. But for me personally, I think I'm probably gonna go into general dentistry. So it's not that important to me to, get my whole application ready for residencies and stuff. I mean, it's definitely important to, keep your grades up and all that, but um I'm not really somebody interested in research or anything like that. So really just, focusing on my hand skills. That's probably the main thing.
So kind of like building on that, what like personal qualities and skills you think you've developed, throughout undergrad and the past year in dental school, that you're going to utilize once you're actually a dentist, like once you're, graduate dental school and you're working in a practice.
I think the number one thing that I was able to do during undergrad that helps me now is just balancing a lot of different things. So I was, working like 20, 30 hours a week a lot of times while taking like a full load of courses in undergrad. I was involved in like different clubs and things. So um, just like being able to handle a lot, organizing that, like, having your schedule all planned out. Because now that I'm in dental school, it's not that it's easy for me to handle everything and manage all my classes and all that, but I think that I'm better able to, take in my workload and, prioritize what I need to do now and, plan out my schedule for like the week and all that. So that was probably the most helpful thing that, yeah.
That's great. That sounds good. So, just before we wrap it up here, what is some major advice you can give pre-dentals, to kind of aid them on their own journeys as they navigate this complicated and sometimes intriguing pre-dental process?
I think the number one advice I'd give you is do not compare yourself to other applicants and your friends. Everybody's application is completely different. There's people out there that may have a 4.0 and, what is the DAT? The top you can get is a 30, right? Yeah. So a 30 DAT and a 4.0 and involved in everything and dental assisted, do that, all this stuff. But that doesn't necessarily reflect on your application. Yours is totally separate. Like I said earlier, I think it's very important to have friends that are really, involved in the same things as you and, pursuing dentistry as well. But don't let that intimidate you as well. I had friends that had, a 3.7 GPA and they had a great DAT score, and I got more reviews than them. So it really depends on your application. Sometimes, for example, say you and Suraj both interviewed at the same place, you had the same statistics, everything was exactly the same, but say there was something about you that really stood out to that interviewer, they might, put you in a different pile because there was one single thing that stood out to them about you, and that could be based on them or it could be based on you. I mean, so everyone's different. And I think that just keeping your head high and, focusing on the long goal, don't get caught up in all the little details, is really important.
That's great advice. Honestly, like personally, I do that a lot, where I would get lost in it and start comparing myself to other people. Even though, like at the end of the day, we're all doing enough to get to where we want to go. And, all of our own experiences are unique in their own right. So comparing each other is not going to do anything. And, when you feel like you're not doing a lot, you're doing a lot. Like you gotta trust yourself and you gotta know that you're doing a lot. So that's awesome. So how could other pre-dentals, reach out to you in case they have any other questions related to the entire process?
Find me on Instagram. I'm sure you guys will be posting something or whatever, so you could find me there too. And yeah, I mean, I'm always here to help anybody, or if anybody has questions, just let me know.
Awesome, for sure. So that concludes our episode of the Dose of Dental podcast. Thank you, Paul, for joining me and sharing your experience as a D1/D2. Your insight was definitely valuable, and we hope that'll be the same for pre-dental listeners. Everyone, please feel free to reach out to Paul at his socials if you have any further questions. Lastly, we thank everyone for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to follow us on Instagram and Spotify, and we'll see you next time for another Dose of Dental Knowledge.